Boys, we're recording again.
Alrighty.
Fantastical.
Jacob Bourne.
Matt Riegler.
Why isn't there a U or an E at the end of your name?
Because I believe it's probably because when I came over from Germany, that's where my name comes from. They probably just decided to get rid of the U and the E at the end, although most people spell it Bourne once they first meet me.
And does that make you more or less proud that they're inadvertently spelling your name both correctly and incorrectly?
Proud because then I get to correct them, and then they never forget.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, wouldn't you rather be sort of related to the thing that's famous, or do you take pride in being
because that's
individual?
my alter ego. That's my alter ego, so I don't want the two to middle in between.
I thought your brother's name was Jason.
No, my brother's name is Zach.
Is it Zach or Zach?
Zach, with a K. Yeah.
Alright, so you spelled that correctly at least.
Of course we did.
Well, yes, because you had such a say in it.
I did. I muttered the word Zach right before my parents decided what to name him.
Oh, really?
No, not at all.
Oh, I was kind of proud of you. You didn't give him a girl's name. That would have been sweet.
No, yeah.
My sister gave me a girl's name.
What was that? Maddie?
Monica.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And
I don't know what girl's name starts with a Z.
Zaria.
Sure.
Alright. Zofia. So yeah, as a kid who mostly grew up in the 90s, I was really happy to not have my name be Monica.
Yeah, I could see why.
Can you? I feel like you don't get the reference.
I feel like it's a Saved by the Bell reference.
We have a Canadian with us, and I bet you he gets the reference.
Hopefully.
Is that a Friends reference?
You were old enough to vote! Come on, Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, that one.
Oh,
sorry.
that Monica. Whatever.
That Monica. See, she didn't name you Stained Dress, so I was confused.
Oh. Sir, it's called a stained face, and even though my epidermis is in a face, well, I already blew my joke.
At least you bailed. We'll give you props for bailing.
No, that was a pun. You guys. So, Jake.
Yeah.
He goes by the name Scotty Wazz, but I'd like you to take a shot at trying to pronounce his actual last name.
Wazazuski.
Oh, it's just terrible. I'm doing this stuff. Why? I could walk out right now and be justified in doing so, but I won't because I have nowhere to walk to. I'll just walk to my door, and it'd be just terrible.
Let me actually pull up his name because it wasn't. That was just a shot in the dark.
It's right there in the Skype feed. Don't you see that beautiful mug?
Oh, okay. No, it's Wazalewski.
There it is. Look at that guy go.
All those college degrees.
My mouse wasn't hovering over the little icon.
Well, that was
the avatar.
My rider that you guys should have the mouse hovering over my icon at all times. I'm going to have to talk to my agent about this. This really is detrimental to the whole Scotty Wazz brand.
Oh, I'll put my mouse over your face, baby.
That's weird. It sounded completely more sexual than it needed to be. I like it. We'll talk later.
Hey, anything that makes Johnny or Mark jealous. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, Jesus, I just have to take my pants down that does that.
You're saying they're ever on?
Kid, that's a good point. Touche. Point to you. First off, thank you guys for having me on. It's an honor. I've listened to your guys for the infancy of this show, and it's gone really well. I think you guys put out a good product. So congratulations on joining the podcast world.
Thank you. As we all simultaneously take a sip of water.
Take a sip of water, soak that in for a bit, and just we sit here as podcasters, looking at this whole landscape. Look at all this land we owned. All these gigabytes. It's amazing.
From Long Island to Milwaukee to Calgary. What a land we live in.
Exactly.
Now, I got one question as I display the name of your show. Why is Face Off 2 words for this hockey show?
Because that's how the person who did the logo up did it. And we just went with that. If you look
so
like
kind of you.
Yeah, I know. We tried. We were like, all right, well, it did the logo like that. We might as well just call it that. And then, I think we like the pairs and fours because, I don't know. Mark's a 4-letter name. Wazz is a 4-letter last name, kind of fake pseudonym. And then Johnny, we just drop the first end and just make it like that. And we just call him Joni because we like to laugh at him that way. But, then just name it FOHS because FHS is a little weird, and we just have the O there, so we can just call it Foosh, and then we...
It's true, all the best things come in fours.
Anyway.
There's a question I like to ask everybody.
7 inches.
Is that all?
Listen.
So really about 4.5.
Yeah, exactly. I measure from the asshole, but I'll go ahead.
He does the same thing I do. We're teaching Jake so many things today.
No, see, in St. Louis, we just start at the belly button, just go down from there.
It's the same length, like your forearm and your shin.
Yeah. You know your forearm is the same length as your foot?
I mean, there's a reason why I always wear XLs.
There you go.
Yep.
Ladies.
Scotty, what is your hockey beginning?
It started actually at 4 years old. My parents were flipping through the channels and I saw something, a lot of colors flying by, and I'm like, hey, what's that? And they turned it back and it was Caps versus Rangers. And I was watching that game. I'm like, well, I have this little hockey stick contraption. My godfather was big into hockey and, he bought me like these little commemorative mini sticks and stuff like that. So I started taking the little mini stick and mimicking the TV. And then going from there, and I got the Fisher-Price skates that were annoying, and they made the bell ring every time you skated. So I put those on and ran up and down the hallways, and my parents were like, well, this we can't have this. We're going to put you in skating class. So next year, age 5, got in skating class, and around age 6, 7, I got into playing hockey. And then played hockey competitively from age 6 to age 18 before I messed up my knee at college tryouts. And, then I went into broadcasting, as many old players are to do. And then we started our podcast, Face Off Hockey Show, August 8th, 2001, our first show. And we've done a show every single week for the last 12 and a half years now.
Holy camole, that's dedication.
Yeah, it is.
It's funny because even when there's like a Wednesday where the guys are like, well, I don't know if I can show up or stuff like that, like we'll adjust it, we'll do a Tuesday show or something like that. And even on Christmas Eve, the guys are like, yeah, we're not going to do a show. I came in from drinking and I did a 2-hour, 8-minute monologue of I don't even know what, and just did it myself because of, it's up there on iTunes and YouTube just for prosperity reasons. It was an interesting time. And, it's fun because me and Mark have known each other since we were 16 and I've known Mark's brother since I was 17 when we started another incarnation of the show, when it was just a streaming radio show. And then, we started the Face Off Hockey Show, and ever since I moved away, this is our one way to keep in contact and just, hang out. It is adorable that way.
Yeah. But you gotta tell us, in a fight to the finish, who wins between Johnny and Mark?
Johnny's an All-American wrestler. In college, he was an All-American wrestler, so. Even though he gives up about, I would say, Johnny's 5'4", Mark's 5'8", he gives up a couple inches. Johnny's solid, he's thick, and he's, like I said, All-American wrestler, dude can take you down, so. Definitely. And when we were in Ottawa for our draft party, we had a wrestling match. Mark tore his ACL when he tried
no.
When he put someone in a figure 4. So he tore his ACL and,
Literally the last time I was wrestling, it was my college girlfriend at the time.
That's called sex, Matt. We'll talk about that a little later too.
Well, funny you should mention that. We were at a birthday party and we were both bored, so we just started. She took off her cross, I took off my scarf, David, because we're respectful. And she's like a petite 5'2", and I'm a petite 6'2", and it was a lot of fun. And then 2 hours later, when we were back at her apartment, now that I think about it, we started wrestling again, and it had a much more pleasant finish. And now she's married. Man, the Amish are weird.
They really are.
So back to Scotty's hockey beginning, and not off of one of Matt's random sexual memory tangents.
That should be a segment of the show.
It has been like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, it started to turn into a weekly occurrence.
Amazing.
Well, that's how I, like when, because this always happens. How many people have you slept with? And yes, they always sound like Kermit the Frog because like that's how I got taught sex. It was with puppets. And, in any event, Tess, stop drinking my water. You have your own. This is my water.
First off, why are you drinking out of a bowl that would attract a cat?
Yay, internet making entertainment better. Hey, boys, we were talking about hockey, and I have a feeling this is probably going to be one of my jump cuts. So, Scotty, back to your hockey beginnings.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Well, what do you want to know? There's so many beginnings, so many ends. Most of my hockey stuff did get through playing, and luckily my dad, Big Stan, was the guy who got me, who holstered that, and he worked for the PG County government in Maryland. He was able to do some stuff for the Capitol Center with signs and traffic lights and things of that ilk, and he was able to get free tickets as well for doing the work, pro bono kind of thing. So it's a quid pro quo kind of logic where you give me one thing and I'll get another. And then we went to Caps games all the time when they played in the Caps Center and kind of fostered my love for it. Yeah, I went to Catholic school, so we had to wear uniforms, but every time we had a dress down day, I was the kid who wore a hockey jersey and apparel and stuff like that.
Sweet.
And I loved it.
You said you grew up started out playing with the little shinny hockey sticks. Did you guys used to play shin hockey when you guys went on road trips and stuff like that?
Oh, that was the thing at a tournament. We always played.
Yes.
We always went to, we would always go to these hotels and we had to block off a whole level, a whole floor to ourselves because it would disrupt everybody else. And yeah, we made nets, we bought everything, we had pads and it was probably the thing we looked forward to most when we went on the road trips.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
We were in especially in bantams and midgets and stuff, we were one of the top teams, so we knew when we traveled we were going to do very well in the tournament, so it was the wind down time that we look forward to. So that was even today with my kid, I play knee hockey with her, and it's always a fun time.
Oh man, I remember one time I was playing, this was my Pee Wee year, so I'm probably 5th grade at this point, and my coaches were barely 22. And they got hammered one night on the trip, and then they came out at 11 o'clock at night and played hall hockey with us. It was so much fun.
Oh, that was not the anecdote I was waiting for. Damn, that's not why I was laughing. I was waiting for a puberty story. I took one in the nuts, and then I started sounding like this. And it was kind of cool. And oh my god, there are girls everywhere. And then you didn't show up for 3 days.
How we turned to Louis Armstrong, I'll never know. But
I don't know.
I like the Louis Armstrong reference though. It's a man after my own heart at that point. But yeah, I mean, I played travel hockey for a couple years and played for my high school as well, and we won 2 state championships junior because our school was a hockey school, so it was so hard to get on varsity, and so I just commanded the JV team to 2 undefeated seasons, and away we went. But yeah, it was a fun time. But then tried out for college, messed up my knee pretty good, and then that's all she wrote. And then by that time, we had already started Face Off Hockey Show, and then I put basically full time towards that and adult hockey too. And we played beer league. And I still go back every year for our annual tournament down in Laurel, Maryland. And yeah, it's been fun, and it's been quite the experience. I mean, doing a podcast has afforded me to go many more places than I would if I would have stuck to hockey and play D3 hockey and then, go into maybe low minors and then have to start a real life when that didn't really pan out and pay the bills as much as I wanted to. But, it's a fun time. It's been a fun journey, and it's still going. I mean, I can't believe I've been to where I've been to.
What kind of player were you? I look at you now and I see Dustin Byfuglien, but I imagine in your younger days you were more of a Jeff Bukaboom.
I would say more of a Byfuglien kind of guy even then, because at that point when I was playing Bantams, I was 5'10", 230. So
Jesus.
I was a big boy, and I could move too. I was one of the faster skaters on the team. I played defense a lot. Yeah, I had a slap shot where we were playing Delaware club team, and I took a slap shot from the point and knocked the goalie out because it knocked him in the mask.
Attaboy.
He was down for a couple minutes, but
that's Peter Bondra and Mike Richter shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, I was more, I would take a rush if I needed to, but I was also a little bit more responsive in my own end. I was a big hitter guy. Like, I was a big bruiser, and when we were playing a high school team, I knocked the kid over the benches. And,
there you go.
Sadly, he knocked his head on the bench and screwed up his neck, so we had to stop the game and get paramedics out there. So that was a little downer. We were playing at the Naval Academy, and the old Naval Academy arena was so echoey because it was just a big hall. And he was hurt. It rang out through the arena. Holy shit, I think he killed him. So I was like, that's interesting.
When I was 12, I was a very small person. And I went to go check, open eyes check, a kid who was much larger. Just like, probably built like you, Scotty, at the time. So I only came up to about his hip. And I must have caught him weird because I went down after I bounced off of him, but I also seemed to have fucked up his knee, and my arena echoed with this other 12-year-old just screaming, writhing in pain, and holding his knee, and I think I like tore out his ACL or something. I felt really bad, but it was just a normal hockey play. He was about to receive the pass, and yeah. Apparently, even pubescent 12-year-olds can scream like pre-pubescence. It was weird. And full disclosure, it knocked the wind out of my sails. I mean, like, I went into a semi-asthmatic attack because, you know, I was small like that.
And that's the best part about.
I said, take care of both of you.
The best part about being a big guy is having people like that try to come at you. And more often than not, they come at me to check him, and I would just stand there, you know, staring at him as they're on the ground. And my hockey was able to transfer over into baseball too, because I played baseball for a small period of time unsuccessfully. I was a catcher, and I was, you know, throw to home. Small little kid tries to block me, and I just shoved him down and just looked at him, dropped the ball in his chest as we walked to the dugout. But yeah, no, I mean, that was a fun time. And even now playing, like, even though I play once a year, which is ironic considering of where I live, and considering I have to haul my hockey gear to Maryland every time, I still have that same thing where I'll rush the puck if I see it, but I'm not gonna, you know, go too crazy because I'm now 275 or something like that. So the fat is still there and the momentum is still there, but catching my breath on the bench that's where the troublesome thing happens. So. But, yeah, and then I'm a bruising broadcaster as well, apparently, is what people have told me. No one has told me that. But I still like to say that because it's alliteration, and I enjoy alliteration. So.
I'll go with it.
Right, sweet. We'll put it on T-shirts, and away we go.
There we go. There's Scotty Wazz's brand right there.
Exactly. Creating all kinds of crazy stuff. We got a bowling tournament coming up before the draft. It's amazing. I don't even know why we're and that's the fun thing about our show is that, you know, even though we as much as we love hockey and things of that stuff, we're so ADD that we've gone on so many tangents and created so many things like this bowling marathon. We're going to hit 9 bowling alleys in a day before we do a show that night and just crazy stuff.
Where are you going to do that?
It's going to be the Wednesday before the Philly draft this year. We're doing it all over Anne Arundel County, which is our home county in Maryland, and there's 9 bowling alleys we're going to hit. So me and Spectres Hockey's Lyle Richardson, we're flying in, and then Johnny's going to pick us up, and Mark is going to meet us there, and we're going to go all around these nine bowling alleys, bowling 1 game per between 10-pin and duck pin bowl, and then afterwards we'll do a show. We're going to get drunk and go play at a dart place and then leave for Philly on Thursday morning. So it's going to be
Maybe you should hire a camera guy or two, maybe somebody who will work on the cheap and can get down rather quickly, and you could, you know, make a video or 3 of all of this lovely extravaganza.
Oh, no, we have a 3-camera shoot planned.
I was just trying to advertise myself.
That was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge over to you.
Oh yeah, no, I knew that much. He was laying on a little bit too thick.
I said that way too slowly. I'm like, I should speak faster.
Let's not speak so cunning and sly with me going up at the last syllable. No, we've planned out a 3-camera shoot on this. And yeah, we need a driver, we need camera people, and we need hookers. We can get the hookers. The other 2, we don't know. But,
driver?
What's that?
I'll be the driver.
Okay. Well, good. I was going to say, if you're going to be the hooker, then we're going to have to rethink this whole
Then
thing.
we're gonna have some problems.
Then Mark's going to be having a great time, but the rest of us are going to be out of the dark.
Well, shouldn't Mark get some love one of these days? I mean, goddamn, he has to put up with Johnny 24/7. Doesn't Mark deserve a little bit of love?
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
He's been my goal. He was my goalie when I played there in beer league, and he's still my goalie in tournaments. I've known him too long. He doesn't deserve the love. That rat bastard. But no, I love those two jabronis. Those are the two guys who I can't really think of doing a show without, because like the ability that we've been able to gel, because obviously Mark and Johnny have been together since Mark was born, and I've known Mark for a while, and I've known Johnny just as long. And it's the ability to have two of my better friends there and do this show has been fantastic, and it's helped us be who we are and helped us achieve the heights that we didn't think we could, because we work so well together, and the chemistry was there before we even started hitting record on the old encoder. So it's been a fun time, and then being with those guys has been really great.
Will you please dig a little deeper about how the Face Off Hockey Show has affected your consumption of hockey, your fandom of hockey, perhaps even the way that you do the show?
We've gotten more access. We've been to, my first draft that I went to was 2002. I was a spry 19-year-old young gentleman me and Johnny got the credentials, or I got the credentials that Wednesday morning. We drove up through the night to Toronto to go there and do a broadcast and take in the thing. So the information has been amazing since we've started. The people we've met and we've been connecting with, whether it be bloggers or hockey writers or teams and stuff like that, they have been amazing in terms of just giving us what we want, giving us people to interview, giving us even to the point when we had the parent company that we used to be into was broadcastmonsters.com, which is now All In Broadcasting. And we would get interviews with teams because they were streaming on our network. We were the main network for them to, stream their games online. And in that day and age, back in the early 2000s, that wasn't a big thing for a lot of teams. And we had a lot of teams on our network. The Bridgeport Sound Tigers, the Lowell Lock Monsters, Chicago Wolves. They were all on our network, and we were able to have access to a lot of their players for interviews and a lot of their, stats and things of that ilk. So access-wise, it's been really good. The weird part about it is, as a fan, I think because I've been so integrated with the media portion of it, I haven't been as much as a fan as I may have wanted to. Like if I wasn't into a podcast or thing like that, I've seemed to be a more professional or taken a more professional outlook to it, which I guess to some end is a bit of a downer, because I look at some people who are fanatics, and it is amazing. And I'm just like, well, I wish I could be them, but I have to be. There's no cheering in the press box. I have to be professional. I can't go gaga when I interview guys that I just saw on the ice, and I can't be fanboy like that. And it kind of tempers it a little bit. But, I still love the game, and I've still been able to absorb it more than I thought I would, and I've been given a lot more access to it. So you see the behind-the-scenes stuff, and I think that gives me a greater appreciation for what a lot of these guys have to go through, the daily grind that they go through, and stuff like that. So as a fan, that's been kind of my integration into it. And I forgot the last question you asked.
I forgot it too, so I'm just going to ask you a different question that relates to the 1992 draft.
1992 or 2002?
I thought you said 1992 was your first.
2002.
Oh, that's not as interesting.
I was going to say 1992 I was only 9, and that would have been amazing.
So which one has been like the best draft you've been to? Because I assume you've been to pretty much one every year.
Yeah, we've been to every one except for the 2005 one, because that was the one that was held. That was a Sidney Crosby draft that was held in the hotel convention center, or the hotel conference room. And I was also getting married that weekend, so it was just like, well, I guess we're not going to that one. So we just watched it on the TV and got drunk while Pierre Maguire was saying Sidney Crosby. I would say, and it's funny because when the Olympic break happens, those 2 weeks, we're going to be reminiscing over our draft, each and every draft we've been to. I'd say for professionally, the best draft we went to was the 2007 one in Columbus, because we were able to do a live show outside of Nationwide Arena, outside of the R Bar there, and we did a live show in front of the Columbus Blue Jackets fan club, and a lot of the NHL guys showed up for it, and a lot of other fans showed up for it. And that was really before a lot of people went to drafts as like a social thing, because now with Twitter and everything like that, the All-Star game and the draft have been more of a social convention for people to hang out with each other. And to that end, I would have to say that for just personally, I would say Minnesota was a big draft for us. The last four, New York or New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, were big ones for us, in terms of just hanging out with people and getting to know people. And that's for us personally, that was probably some of the better ones. Montreal was a great one too, because, we were able to just be that close to the arena and just drink with all our buddies, and Ottawa was a gong show within itself. But yeah, the best part about it is we've been able to create a story for each year we've went to, and I think that's the best part, especially with Johnny riding shotgun with me most of the time. So we have memories and some of them we don't ever speak of unless it's in code.
That's what best friends are for.
Exactly, and that's what Johnny's for too, because I wouldn't say he's the best friend. I mean, he's there, but no, he's definitely.
You just use him to get to mark.
Well, yeah, exactly. Got to even it out for the Potantos. We've had a lot of fun, and I think every time we get to a place, every time we get to the hotel, and we see things, just like, dude, this is amazing. We go in the rafters, we look around, and we're just like, why are we here? How are we in the media rafters, dude? How are we doing a show from the draft? How do we keep getting these credentials? It's an amazing thing. And furthermore to that Columbus point, how great it was for us is we actually had a sponsorship with the hotel airports, and we got free hotel rooms.
No way!
We got free hotel rooms, and we got free booze because we did it at a bar. That was our best draft as professionally and personally probably too.
Wow.
Holy shit snacks.
Yeah, and then Vancouver is probably the most infamous draft because we had our PR girl at the time come up with us, and we stayed at this raunchy-ass hotel, and it is one of the stories that people keep asking us about, and people keep referencing, because, hey, how about the Dufferin? And I'll tell you guys this: when we walked in, there was a lot of noise coming from the lounge, and the guy said, "Don't worry, the tranny show will be over soon." So that set up the weekend really well.
I'm sure your PR person had a great time that weekend.
Her outlook, she's like, listen, all I want to see is a prostitute and get some A&W root beer. And as one of the ladies of the evening walked through the lounge and through the door, and she turned to us and she said, well, all I need now is a root beer. It was a great time had by all, I think. And that was one of the ones that I enjoyed a lot, because it was just me, Johnny, and our PR girl, Laura. And after that, everyone started coming, like all of our buddies. Mark joined in, and then all the rest of our buddies, because it was in close proximity to them. Most of them came, and even then we met new people too, because, like I said, of Twitter and Facebook, and the fact that we are wide-reaching now, apparently, somehow. Not in my wildest dreams would I ever be thinking of speaking to a dude who's in Milwaukee and a dude who's in Long Island. It's amazing.
Sir, it's on Long Island?
Listen, it's an island that's long. Luckily, I didn't call you. He's on
an
the
islander.
He's on the place where we get all the iced tea. Obviously, why wouldn't they have that? But
I was hoping you didn't know about that.
We talked a lot about it a little bit before the show. I'm just kind of interested. Why are you not particularly fond of the Olympics?
For me, I think first and foremost, I've never been nationalistic. I was born in the States and I hold dual citizenship, but I don't really have a kin to being all American or being all Canadian for any kind of sporting event. I don't see it. And also the fact that if I'm going to have to watch a frickin' Austria versus Norway matchup, and as much as I love hockey, I can't struggle myself through watching it. I think as it gets past the round robin sort of things, I'll probably gear up. But I'm very apathetic to this whole round robin thing. As great as it is to see the world's best players out there playing on an amazingly huge all-star team, I can't get up for Canada against Norway. Can't get up for Canada against Austria. U.S. against Estonia or Slovenia. It's hard for me to think, all right, well, these games matter. How do they matter if it's frickin' 10-0? If they're running up the score, it doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me. So I think it's a combination of not being too nationalistic in terms of who I'm going to cheer for and where I'm from, as well as just the games not meaning much until like that second week.
But what happens if like U.S. plays Russia in a round robin game? Are you going to get up for that?
Probably not, because I'll cheer for Russia. Well, because I have that's a whole nother can of worms with my hatred of USA Hockey in terms of the people who were in charge of it. That stems back for years from the Walt Kyle era of the World Juniors back in 2004. So I mean, it's really hard for me to get up for any. Even in like World Juniors, it's a big deal up here in Canada. They do promos for it starting in September. It's amazing,
Wow.
and still I can't get up for those round robin games. Like even when Canada plays the U.S. Sure, it's cool to watch on New Year's Eve, but it's not like I'm not going to get overly excited for it because it could end in a disaster for Canada or the U.S. And you know that affects their placing in when it actually gets good in the playoff round. If it doesn't get good to the medal rounds, then I'm not gonna watch it. I guess I'm a snob that way. I just can't stand to watch round robins when I know, hey, these kind of mean something a little bit, but not as much as it's going to mean in 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Now, this might be a little bit of an interesting question, but I would like to get both of your opinions. We find out that the U.S. captain is going to be named tomorrow at, I believe, 1 p.m. Eastern. Who do you guys think gets the C for the U.S.?
Bobby Ryan.
You can't spell C. Spelled it S-E-A. That's a
Just a, yeah. Cause I almost said, to make fun of that, I always said, no, it's just the letter C, and then I just realized, but that's what would be on his chest, and, good job, Matt.
Looking up and down this list, I don't know if there's one guy that really jumps out at me. Actually, you know what? I'll just go in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm going to say that Dustin Brown gets it just for the fact that looking up and down this list, he could be the one guy who has the most leadership capabilities. Not to slight Ryan Callahan or anything like that. I think that he's the guy that they're going to look forward to and look to lead because, yeah, he led the Kings to a Stanley Cup, so I don't see why he wouldn't be able to get an Olympic captaincy at that point.
Logical, but Ryan Suter has fully blossomed into a megastar, at least within the hockey circles. And Zach Parise, noted goal scorer at the end of the gold medal game no, that's probably how it ended, I think.
Yeah, Parise scored the last for the U.S. and then
they both got gold medals. They
board.
both got gold medals. Everybody went home happy.
I wish that was true, considering who scored the actual winner.
Exactly.
But he's also been in the most amount of commercials.
Interesting.
Both for the Wild, both for USA Hockey and the NHL Network. And I know that I'm playing an obvious card here, but it does make sense that if they're gonna continuously pump a guy on your television, then he will wear the C. Brown makes sense too.
You would think that, but at the same time, if we're gonna base it on number of commercials on NHL Network, the Wax Vac guy gets that. Like honestly, he found a vacuum that cleans out earwax. It's amazing. I bought 3 of them. My eardrums have never felt better because I'm not jabbing them with Q-tips all the way in.
My God. I mean, this is why we had you on, Scotty. It's because you learn us things that we never would have learned on our own.
You learn us things. Good,
yeah, I know. I was gonna
good English.
I was gonna bust his chops on that, but Jacob took the role on that. But I think they can't go wrong with for any of them. But all of them were A's in 2010 too. So it's not like one guy has a reach over the others. So it depends on what Boyle wants to do.
I think it's gonna come down to, and I feel like all 3 of these guys are gonna get letters. It's gonna be Zach Parise, Dustin Brown, or I feel like David Backes might get that third A. Long shot for a C, but I'm still gonna throw his name out there because I think not just because I'm a Blues fan, but I also think I think he's a very underrated leader in the NHL so far this season and last season.
That's a good. I completely forgot David Backes was still a thing. So
all right. Wild card. And this is what I was
wild card /
well, yeah, he is a wild card, but so is this. And this is what I was hoping Team Canada would do because everybody on their team is wearing a letter on their NHL teams. What if nobody gets the C and there's just 3 or 4 A's?
This isn't a rebuilding hockey team. I don't think they're going to go that route. They're not going to give anyone the C. This isn't the Florida Panthers. We're not going to have a captain this year. We're just going to rotate it around the letters. They have to have a
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think it's a cool idea saying that there's nobody that's captaining this team. We're all leading the team as one. But I think they're going to give somebody the C. They have to.
I guess Scotty won't really give a shit about this, but Jake, when I was heading up to upstate New York Last Friday. We were talking about the Olympics coming up, and we were talking about jerseys, and one of my buddies suggested how cool would it be if the outline of the state that the person is from is a shoulder patch.
That would be awesome.
That would be
really
nice.
like that.
It's funny you mention that because our show has a lot of like British. This is going off on a side tangent, which I'm sure the show never does. It's funny because we have a lot of British fans and they're big into their British leagues. And what happens if they're an import player, or even if they're not, on the back of their jersey, on the collar, they have the flag of where they're from. So you have a lot of Union Jacks on there. You have a lot of like Latvian Czech stuff there. And I'm thinking to myself, that's pretty badass. Why not? And I'm not saying this as a guy who loves his state's flag like Maryland's is, because it is the baddest ass flag in the Union. So, I mean, I would love to see someone, even the state outline would have been great on someone's shoulder patch. But no, you have to have those translucent rubbery stars on the shoulders and all the other crazy crap. This could be, and you gentlemen can correct me if I'm wrong, these jerseys have been horrific. Nike has completely screwed the pooch.
I agree with one exception, and that is Slovakia.
Yes, Slovakia's done it right.
Slovakia did it right, but I agree with you. I feel like this is a pretty poor batch of Olympic jerseys, even though I do have a white Olympic jersey from this year hanging up in my closet right now.
But it was gifted. It was gifted.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. I want to give that out. A shout out to my parents. I absolutely love that jersey. But I do agree, as a whole, the jerseys are subpar compared to some years.
Finland's white jersey looks like something that would be in a stadium series. It's that big, it's the white jersey with the flag there. I'm like, honestly, why? I understand that Finland loves their flag and it's great and all, but why make it just the big flag? You're not Switzerland. You don't have to have the cross there in the corner and nothing else.
What about freaking Russia's where it looks like the bottom of it's like the birds coming out of negative space? It looks
They don't have a white jersey. It's a red jersey and a less red jersey.
Exactly.
Goodness, it's terrible.
Jesus, Matt, you alright over there?
That's loving it.
Because he said the thing I was thinking.
It's a red and a less red. Ha!
And they get freaking wings on the shoulder.
Exactly. That should be Austria's because that's where Red Bull's from. But yeah, see, that's another reason I can't get into the Olympics. The jerseys are awful.
We should collectively go out and get Team Israel's jersey, which is a badass Star of David with a hockey stick coming out the bottom of it.
They do have a solid one. And I don't know have you guys seen the documentary? TSN did a documentary about hockey in Israel.
Yeah, I did.
I have not seen that.
It's really cool. It's really cool with what they did there. So that's bringing that back down. But
spoiler alert.
Yeah,
it turns out when people literally put down the differences and start trying to work together, regardless of whatever may have divided them before, eventually kindness, honesty, friendships, maybe even loves starts to grow instead. It's weird how that might happen.
Yeah, it's Rocky.
That's a very weird concept.
It's Rocky IV all over again. It's fine. But I have to say, as we mentioned Crosby a couple times, I'm glad that I've taught my daughter well, and every time she sees Sidney Crosby in any kind of picture form, she boos him. So I'm very happy about that. I tussle her hair, and then that's the girl.
You know, I remember being a kid, and they would do that, as if I can't name them, my friends would do that whenever they heard or saw a picture. Heard a picture? Matt, what is wrong with you? What is going on with your brain?
I feel like Matt, I don't know. I feel like Matt should be really fucking high for this, and I have a feeling he's not.
We've got, ladies and gentlemen, what you don't know is we've done a show 7 hours for the past 7 hours, and Matt's finally reached his breaking point.
It has to do with Dennis Potvin because we're all Rangers fans, and whenever we see a picture on the screen or hanging on a wall of Dennis Potvin, somebody has to go, sucks! To which I respond, no he doesn't. He's in the Hall of fucking Fame. That doesn't make any sense. Ulf Nielsen wasn't that great a player anyway. I know he was leading scorer of the Rangers that season, but his career trajectory was about the climax and he wasn't going to be that good a player anyway.
That's a long chant. I don't know if you can get that in the stands, just chanting that. Because that's just really long retort. Like if you're going to get people into it and just clapping, it's really odd clapping and, I don't know. Maybe work it in the middle of the game.
Tess, what do you think? Well, she rolled over.
Well, that's good. That's something. I guess that's something. Good job, yeah.
Who's your good girl? Who's your good girl? Ow!
Apparently his pussy bites.
I might want to get that checked out. Pretty sure.
It's like teeth all over again.
It's puberty all over again.
Oh, terrible. Good time.
Yeah, but for what people don't know is that we haven't been doing a show quite for 7 hours, but my recording is now showing 2.5. And it's 2.5 straight.
2.5.
It's 2.5 straight of more or less this. Except now I've decided to record it.
Our pre-show is going to last longer than the actual show.
Our pre-show does have a little bit more raunchier content. Not much raunchier, but just about.
Just enough to make it R instead of PG-13.
Exactly. We go the hard R, ladies and gentlemen, like a horny pirate.
Scotty, you've been a member of the Calgary Nation for about a decade now, but you started out in D.C. So if the Flames and the Capitals ever meet in the Stanley Cup final, who do you cheer for?
Oh, it's easy. It's the Caps. Caps have been my team forever, and I don't feel akin to the Flames. Like even though I've lived here for 10 years in July, so I've never felt like one. I've never felt as one with. I feel closer to the Calgary Hitmen than I do the Calgary Flames because I've known the Calgary Hitmen because I was such a big wrestling nerd too. And when Bret Hart owned the team, it was the most amazing thing ever. So I mean that was cool. But there's something about this team where I don't feel it's very stagnant in terms of being an outsider trying to come in because I didn't live here through the glory years and when they had decent teams and the Theo Fleury era, and I was here for the tail end of the Jerome McGinley era, but the Caps have been through since Rod Langway was there, since he was the captain, and freaking Dino Ciccarelli, and the 1990 playoff run is really when I got really hooked, when Mike Liut took the team on his shoulders and just went from there. And
I thought that was John Druce.
John Druce too, but when Don Beaupre went down, Mike Liut was the guy in net, and he saved a lot of their bacon. John Druce was amazing that one year, putting up 19 goals. Dino Ciccarelli was amazing before he got injured. And that's what really hooked it in. And the only sad thing is that Scott Stevens wasn't there. He got offer sheeted by the Blues, and he wasn't there to because if we had him, maybe we would have beaten the Bruins and then got trampled by the Edmonton Oilers. But still, the Caps have been my team forever, and we did have a bit of a tiff when Jaromir Jagr signed there, because I knew it was going to be a bad deal regardless. But we've reconciled with Alex Ovechkin being the big superstar, the league-wide superstar. Not just the area superstar, a league-wide superstar, the first that the Caps have had in probably forever, like one of the bigger guys. Like Rod Langway's always mentioned, Peter Bonder's always mentioned, but they were more localized. They weren't on a nationwide scale like Ovechkin is.
I feel like that's why I sense a lot of animosity to Sidney Crosby coming from you, is because of the Crosby v. Ovechkin debate.
No, I've always hated Pittsburgh. I've always hated Pittsburgh for the years that the Caps would be up 3-1 and they blew it. And it's always Pittsburgh that came back and beat them. And when my dad and I went to games, it was always a busload of Pittsburgh fans being the idiots that they are. So I've always had a hatred for Pittsburgh. And the city itself, you can't find a freaking taxi there at all. So it's a terrible place, and I'm not a big fan of it. So it was everything I could do in my power when we went there for the draft a couple years back, not to burn the city to the ground.
You talked about it a little bit, and I'm going to mention it, and then I'm going to dash because I have to leave here in like 2-3 minutes. So sorry about this. But you mentioned the Blues picking up Scott Stevens.
Yes.
And that was 94, 95?
I think it was earlier than that. I want to say 1990.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, because I tried to look it up right now, and I haven't gotten it. Anyway, at least from what I understand about it, that was like the first really big contract that somebody got in free agency that really started driving up what ended up started the upward trend of people getting these unbelievable contracts money that ended up putting in the cap in.
1991.
1991. As a Caps fan, do you really feel like the Blues were the ones that really upped the free agency game and kind of started that trend? How do you feel about that whole Stevens going to the Blues sort of ordeal?
Oh, I think it was harsh because of the fact that Caps lost one of their great big guys. But I don't think economically that had too much of a deal. I mean, you look at it in hindsight, 4 years at $5 million. I mean, it's just over $1 million a year, so it wasn't that crazy. And I think I'm more upset with the Caps for not turning anything of those 7 draft picks that they got into much of anything outside of Sergei Gonchar and Brendan Witt. But I mean, I can see what they did. I mean, the Blues were looking for the future. They were looking at a guy that could have been their cornerstone and something they could build off of. And sadly, it didn't happen that way because then he went to the Devils the next year. But they saw what they could do, and they saw what Stevens could bring, and that's why they eventually got Al McInnes and Chris Pronger in there, and they saw how good a good defense can actually take to pretty big heights, maybe not in the playoffs, but in the regular season for sure. So that was a big deal for them, and I think that they actually did it smart. They were a smart team in doing that, taking one of the top guys who was not even in his prime yet, going from there. It was amazing how they were able to do it. I was pissed off because he wasn't on our team anymore, but he's definitely a guy who I thought could have been great for the Caps in those years, but he wasn't there, and the Caps faltered because they didn't have that one extra thing. Kevin Hatcher wasn't the answer, sadly.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll be doing this sometime fairly soon.
How does this keep happening?
I don't know. It's kind of weird. I heard you talking about Scott Stevens playing for the Rangers, and then it drops out. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, well, I was pointing out the irony that he spent his OHL career playing for the Rangers and then spent his NHL career destroying the Rangers.
It's kind of odd how that works, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. In any event, so
Yes.
you mentioned Liut earlier.
He is a folk hero of mine. Yeah, I mean, when he came on that run in 1990, which now that you say that Scott Stevens was there until 91, I'm just like, wait, was he on that team? I have to go and look back at that video that I had. But when the Caps got him, it was a big boost in terms of, because first they didn't give up much. They gave up Yvon Cormier in that deal. When he got traded to the Caps, it was a big boost for the fact that as good as Don Beaupre was, Jim Rivnak and Sean Simpson, the goalies in the Baltimore Skipjacks organization, weren't as good. And if the Caps wanted to make a big run, Liut was a guy who was a former Pearson Trophy winner for NHLPA MVP. He was always a good goalie in St. Louis, decent goalie in Hartford. But the fact that he was able to come in and be a big relief and a big veteran presence for a semi-young team, it was good because they had a guy who was durable back there, and they were able to go ahead and Ivan Korovu. I'm sorry, that was wrong of me that he got traded for, but it was a nice relief from Jim Rivnak, and Bob Mason had gotten hurt as well, and Ole Kolzig was still a young scamp at that point, so Liut was that insurance piece, and luckily Beaupre got injured with the knee injury, and Liut, with his veteran presence, was able to step in and got us at that point, got the Caps to that point further than they had ever been before, so he was a big component in that, as was John Druce, and as was Dino Ciccarelli at the time.
No, you can say us. If you cared that much, then it's us.
But I hate people that do that too. I just I didn't get paid by the team yet. I paid them, but I don't know. I always contract in terms of us versus the team name. I'm a part of the team as a fan at that point, but at the same time, I'm not getting salaried.
If you're willing to give somebody your money, then you're a part of it.
But even then, I didn't give them my money because they were free tickets. So I felt. I felt at that point at 9 years old, I was 9 years old. No, that was a lie. 6 years old. I didn't really have a stock in it, but either way, yeah, Liut's a big character, and he's always referenced when we bring up Caps goalies of old, just because of what he did in 1990. And funny enough, Johnny's got a Mike Liut stick, and it was signed by him too, so that was pretty cool. Now he's working as an agent, so it's the definitive progress of a hockey player. Either you go into the front office or you go into agency or broadcasting. You can't do either.
Meanwhile, that only seems to happen in hockey. In football and basketball, they descend into crippling poverty and crippling depression. And baseball, nobody cares about.
Yeah. Baseball guys can play till they're 45. I'm pretty sure Jesse Orozco still has a deal with the Padres. I don't really know.
I'm telling you that Bobby Bonilla still has a deal with the Mets.
Oh, yeah, for a couple more years, too.
In any event, yeah. Speaking of kids, you have a podcast about the minor leagues. I want to know, how young is too young?
I don't understand the question. There is no too young at that point. I mean, well, obviously, when you look at the minor leagues, the only age discrimination is AHL. You have to be 20 to play there, unless you're out of college or you're from Europe. As far as I know, ECHL, SPHL, CHL, 18 is fine. You can go and play an 18.
No, Scotty, what I'm asking you is, how young is too young for them to be considered worth tracking their progress? Like Connor McDavid and Tavares and Crosby, prodigies are obviously different, but how young is too young to start really focusing on a prospect?
I'd say 12. And even then, one of my favorite stories is Gretzky was hounded in Pee-wees, and he was so turned off by the media pressure, he gave goalie Greg Steffen his jacket because they looked alike, and Greg Steffen started signing autographs as Wayne Gretzky, sometimes putting the S instead of the Z.
That's awesome.
in the autograph. So there's that. But I think when you have guys like Connor McDavid, when you have someone like John Tavares, Aaron Ekblad too, who's going to be a top draft pick in this year's draft, they were tracked at 14, even younger than that. They were exceptional players. The OHL gave exceptional status to them and were able to start a year earlier than they would have. It's a 16-year-old league, 16 to 20, but they started at 15. And they still played well.
20 is insane.
It is. It's amazing how the big differential. But at the same time, I mean, if they're good enough, and they have to pass a skill test to be able to have exceptional status.
What does a skill test consist of? Being able to parallel park?
Yeah, I think so. I think parallel parking is one of them. Also, ABC backwards and forwards. I think what they do is they take tape of them and they see them in person and they put them against in like different camps against older players and see how they do against that. If they can take the physical toll and if they can take the mental toll as well. But a lot of them, the mental toll is just traveling. And at that point, in terms of just Canadian travel, is amazing as it is. So I think if they're able to take the mental and physical toll, they just say, yes, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to go ahead and just give you exceptional status, and if you can fall off, then it's on us. But they haven't fallen off yet. Aaron Ekblad's been very amazing. He was like 6 foot 200 when he went in the league at 15, so he's going to stand his own. John Tavares was able to make his own way. Connor McDavid's the same way. So I think in terms of that, I think anything before like 14 and younger is a little bit too much, but you still should be able to keep your eye out on it. And in a hockey crazed place like Canada, it's almost like basketball is in the States, where there are kids that are getting scouted for college at 9 years old, 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, heck, I think even a kid committed to Penn State for hockey at 13. So it's amazing how much younger and how much more schools and teams want to develop their kids in their system and get them marketable out there so the next wave of people can come in, because it is a younger man's game. But I think 14 and younger could be a little bit too young, but even then, it depends on the kid. It's case-by-case basis. Overall, yeah, that's the funny thing about it, is that if you see a kid who's 14, but he's able to play against 20-year-olds and do just fine, then, I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be allowed to take the next step forward in his career. It's not going to make him to the NHL any quicker because he still has to be 18 to get drafted. So if he can get development when he's younger, and then by the time an NHL team gets him, the kid's going to be a cash cow for marketing and for himself.
Certainly. Man, I'm trying to remember how big I was when I was 14 or 15. I was maybe 5 foot, maybe 90 pounds. I was still playing hockey and all the other sports, but man.
Kids are getting bigger and bigger, man. Like, honestly, my kid, she's 7 now, and she's like 4.5 feet already. It's like, God, kid, just don't grow. Stop growing. You're getting too big.
And you're only like 5'6", so.
That's the weird part about it. Not 5'11.5", ladies and gentlemen. Let's not get this all contrived.
I how you threw in the half. Why don't we just call you 5'12"?
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's a 5. You know what? I'm 5'11.5", but I'm 6'2" with the afro, so it works out perfect.
Did I show you my license photo, or did you?
I have seen how wild your hair gets, sir. It is quite tremendous. It is the Jufro to end all Jufros.
Yes, it is. I'm quite proud of it.
As you should. May I make an amendment to that, though?
Of course.
What you said about the minor league is that I don't want to get people too construed about junior hockey in terms of that, because the minor league podcast I do is actually just minor leagues. There's a little bit to do with junior hockey in there, but I'm thinking of a whole other podcast to do about junior hockey. But the minor league podcast that I do is called The Farm Report, and it just basically deals with AHL, ECHL, and all the low minor leagues and stuff like that. And I think that has to do with the fact that I don't think outside of their own leagues giving them press, I don't think that a lot of people give love to the minor league system, even though it's spread out throughout the U.S. and Canada. And the funny thing about that is that when the lockout happened, people were so creeped out that there was going to be no hockey, and I did a whole thing when I used to do blogs, did a whole thing about better know a minor league. And I went through the minor leagues and told these people, here, go check out this team, go check out this league, go check out this league, because minor league hockey within itself is such a community-based organization, much akin to what junior hockey is in Canada. But minor league hockey is more because these guys, if they don't succeed, they have to find another job somewhere. You look at what the San Francisco Bulls in the ECHL, they folded up mid-season. That's 20 players out of a job. That's office staff out of a job. So it's a bigger thing. So to support a community team like that and support a minor league team, the hockey's probably not going to be as good as NHL level, but you can't expect that for guys playing in the minors. But you're going to see a lot of good prospects, especially in the AHL, maybe some in the ECHL. And if you want guys who are just trying to last out their glory, like the SPHL and the CHL are great places to go as well. So I think minor league hockey does get a bad rap in the U.S. and even Canada. So I think maybe I'm just going to be the catalyst to try to get people talking about minor leagues more and more. And so far, two episodes in, it's gotten a really good response, and I'm really happy about that. And go forward from there.
It's a fantastic show, and it's really easy to learn from. You break down the information succinctly and with all the necessary information so that we can understand what is or isn't going on. I learned about the San Francisco Bulls through you, and this was before they folded, but I didn't know that they existed.
That's the crap part about it is I put it up on Sundays usually, and then Monday they fold up. I'm like, you couldn't have really just did it like Sunday morning, so I have to wait a whole another week to break this news to people. But there's a lot of people who don't really follow minor leagues as men. There are a lot of pockets in the world that do follow it. I mean, I know Hershey, Pennsylvania is a big one that follows it because that's all they have in terms of pro sports is the Bears. And that's a big thing there. And a lot of the northeastern places, Providence, Rhode Island is another big town for minor league hockey. And there's other pockets around that minor league hockey is their end-all be-all. So I know that people outside of that, who watch the NHL and don't really know about that, I want to be able to break it down and not talk an insider talk and assume that people know what I'm talking about. So you have to break it down for people, and you have to know your audience. And even if you break it down too much, you really can't, because the more simpler terms you talk in people, the more relatable it's going to be. And that's just for every walk of life. You make it more relatable to people, you're going to be more attracted. You have more people talk, and spread the word about whether it's your podcast or your blog or your company or whatever. If you even if it don't talk down to people, but, break it down for them in a simpler way.
Continue on that trend, but tell us about the difference between the career trajectory from a junior player and the career trajectory for a minor league player, because, those are two different kind of careers and two different age groups and two different expectation levels, from the front office down to the player, and from the player to the reality of what their life may or may not be.
The junior player is obviously looked at a little bit more often because they're the cream of the crop. They're the kids that are going to be most NHL ready when they're 18 by the time their draft year is. And the exceptional ones do get there immediately at 18, maybe stay another year in junior before they can go up to the pro level and be able to play in either the AHL because of the AHL's age restrictions. Easy for me to say. But a lot of the kids who are in the prime mode are going to be successful and be prepared by the time they reach the NHL. For minor league guys, it's mostly the lower minor league you get, because the tier system is AHL is like AA, or AHL is like AAA, ECHL and CHL are like AA, and SPHL are like single A. So a lot of the guys who are good enough in junior, but not good enough to be NHL, to be in the AHL for a year or two and then get called up. And ECHL and CHL guys are the fringe players in junior hockey and found a place to play because they're good enough to play on that level and can keep up, but may or may not see a call up to the AHL or NHL. And then SPHL is just guys who finished out their junior career, maybe did some years in Canadian university for hockey, and then decide to find a place in the southern U.S. to play hockey and still get paid for it and still be technically a professional player.
So what does that say about the foreign leagues, the SEL, the KHL, and other such leagues? Where do they rank on this scale? Do they rank closer to a junior team or closer to a minor team?
I think it's a minor league team. I would akin the KHL to an AHL level kind of thing, because the talent's there in the KHL and is a professional kind of thing, but it's spread out. Like, you're not going to have 30 teams of superstars or 32 teams of every team having a superstar. You're going to have a lot of teams that are going to be very minor league talent and stuff like that. It's interesting how much the KHL builds himself up, but if they played against like a NHL team all the time, then they would probably get murdered all the time. The AHL team, they could hold up and they could maybe go for the Calder Cup and stuff like that. Other European leagues, it's very hard to tell because of the fact that a lot of the guys who are over there make a minor league team in the U.S. So a lot of guys who played in the ECHL or who were career AHL players go over to Switzerland or to Finland or to any of those countries over there because the pay is a lot better and they're going to be given a lot better chance to actually perform very well in front of a very rabid crowd. Glenn Metropolit's a guy who, kind of a minor leaguer, he was on the fringe, up and down in the NHL, and mostly a role guy, and he's over in Switzerland right now having the time of his life because he found his niche and he was able to find a great place to play. Jason Krog is another guy who was a career AHL guy. He went over to Germany and played very, very well and was able to get a chance again in the NHL. So a lot of these guys ply their trade. If they get sick of the minor leagues, they go over to Europe, get paid very handsomely, and get themselves out there so they can come back to the NHL, maybe as a third-line guy. So it's almost a go-between. It's that middle ground between AAA and the pros. It's almost like I don't know how to describe it because it's just a different animal within itself. But I would say all those leagues are closer to a AAA minor league like the AHL and than they would be in NHL.
So is this sort of the explanation for your angst against the Olympics and other international play, where if the guys were that good in the first place, they'd be in the NHL and we would see even more diversification of the teams. But because we know that that's not true, or at least we see that not being the case, when we have to watch Slovakia and Slovenia and Austria and all the other countries that only have an AHLer or two, that you kind of turn away because you know that that's not truly the cream of the crop.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That has a lot to do with it. I mean, you look at, like, I'm a big fan of international hockey in terms of just because I watch the Spengler Cup every year, which is an invitational tournament over there in Davos, Switzerland, and I love it to death because you see international teams, but there's a lot of old NHLers on there that are playing for the teams, and it's names from the past you didn't remember anymore. And even this year, an AHL team in Rochester, the Americans went over there and played for the first time since 1996. So it's fun to see. But yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of the Austrian club teams, and they have a lot of guys who are, well, there is an import cap where they can only have so many guys who don't play in Austria or don't have an Austrian citizenship. You know, it's hard to say that these guys are the cream of the crop because, you know, they're playing on their club teams and maybe they're at the bottom of the roster or bottom of the points table because of it. So it's hard for anyone to imagine that this Austria team is going to be a powerhouse or be a dark horse when they only have one NHL guy and 21 other guys that are, you know, maybe middle of the pack in their own league. So if they get murdered, then Michael Grabner is going to be the one guy to look at. It's just like, oh, so he's hanging out here. Oh, it's Tommy Vanek too. Oh, look at that. It's hard for me to get up on guys who we might not hear after this tournament's done, even in international play and stuff like that. The only good thing is that there are guys who do use the Olympic as a catapult. I mean, Matt Zuccarello-Azan is a key point for that, for what he did. And you mentioned this on our show too. He transcended that and was able to get himself a contract.
And before him, Mark Streit.
Yeah, Mark Streit as well. I mean, a lot of guys are able to use it as a catapult, but it's very few and far between anymore because most of the guys are already on people's radar because NHL's teams have built up their scouting staff so much because these guys have been diamonds in the rough. So they've been able to up their scouting and be able to actually go ahead and, you know, we're able to pick out guys from Norway because we have a scout over there who can see the potential in this kid. We can pick up a guy from Slovenia like Anze Kopitar. Like, we were able to pick him up because he did so well, and he actually moved. He knew how little talent there was in Slovenia for him to go up against. He moved to Sweden to play junior hockey there and play for the Swedish Elite League for a year or two. So, I mean, guys, I think hockey players are a lot more well-versed on where they can play and where they want to play to get noticed and to take that extra step. And they get out of their comfort zone and go to that. So I think, like, the smaller countries, as great as it is to see a Norway or Austria or Slovenia or Latvia, it doesn't have the same pizzazz as it used to have. I mean, these aren't unknowns. We know so many people now that we know that this team is going to be – that we know this is going to give us X, Y, and Z, rather than there's so many unknowns that we don't know that Norway is going to come out and be the darling of the 2010 Olympics as they were. So it's interesting how much I like international hockey in terms of club teams, but when it comes to nationality or the international game and national teams, I couldn't give two hoots about.
Well, no, actually, I think that makes a lot of sense. You prefer things to be within their own paradigm, and you don't want to see them arbitrarily or inappropriately outside of that paradigm. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I mean, you look at it this way, with everything coming up in Sochi and everyone's so paranoid about the terms of what's going to happen in terms of security and the safety of everyone around there. And Hockey Canada even came out the other day and said that we don't have a contingency plan. If the NHL pulls the players, we're not going to have a team. And it's just like, because they haven't talked to any of the European pros or any amateur guys to go over for the team on such short notice. And it's amazing to me. It's just like, well, if they pull the NHL guys, I think it would be a little bit more exciting tournament, because we're going to see guys represent their country that wouldn't get the chance, one way or the other. And I think that would make it a little bit more, because there's such an unknown in that, and it would make it more exciting. With the NHL guys, it's like Russia wanted to do half KHL, half NHL guys. They decided it ended up more like 80% NHL, 20% KHL for their roster. And it's just like, well, don't say one thing and do another. If you know the NHL guys are going to be the cream of the crop, then just take NHL guys. Don't try to hack and sack and go ahead and just put your best team out there. And I think with the unknown, is a little bit better than the known, because then you're not going through the motions. There is a chance of that upset, that late rally, that dark horse of a team. You could see, if they're all amateurs, Norway could win a gold medal in that point, because maybe the amateurs in the U.S. and Canada and Russia aren't as good as the amateurs in Norway, because the amateurs in Norway know that they're playing for pride at this point. I don't know. It's a convoluted point that I think I made 7 minutes ago, but I still ramble on because I don't think I got it yet.
No, actually, I think that you made a really concise and interesting point.
Thanks,
Mom.
Mom.
That was convoluted at all.
Thanks, Mom.
There.
Goodness.
Speaking of Russians.
Yes, sir.
When do you think we're ever going to get out from the Cold War? Or do you want me to expand on that a little?
Yeah, please expand on that.
All right. When I hear about America or Canada talk about Russia within the hockey paradigm, they always harken back to something that happened during Phil Esposito's days, which is interesting until you've heard it for the 100th time. But there seems to be a ton of bad blood still, and we're 2-3 generations past all that Michigas. So, do you think that it's because these are the 3 strongest hockey countries still? And they're trying to still assert their way of hockey? Or do you think that there's still some harking back to when we almost ended the world?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's an animosity there that still lingers on, especially in Canada, because that's the game. A lot of Canadians get up more for Russia-Canada than they do Russia-US, or Canada-US even. The big thing with that is, I think the Russians were so good for so long. They ran roughshod in the 70s and 80s, man. I mean, 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're like an oldie station, for Pete's sake. They're just playing the hits all the time. So many gold medals, so many championships, so much great talent that was there that never came over to the NHL. I think a lot of people are trying to make up for, a lot of the countries are trying to make up for lost time in terms of, we need to get this back because Russia and the Soviet Union were so great for so long. We need to build our own way. I mean, for Canada, they could say hockey was born there, but at the same time, it's almost as if they're trying to convince themselves that they're still the best hockey nation. The U.S. is still trying to, prove to themselves that they belong in the top 6 kind of countries that are amazing at hockey. But I think when you look at those 3 countries as a whole, I mean, they all bring a great amount of skill and history and lineage that they almost want to be able to one-up each other every single time. And I think that's a lot to do with it. These were the 3 big nations for the longest time in terms of hockey. And you can throw Sweden in there too if you want a top 4 kind of gimmick. But you look at Canada, Russia, and U.S., those are the 3 names that you look at when you look at those destiny days. And even going forward, they've built after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russians built up their teams very well. The unified team won in 92, and then Russia from there started to build up a great amount of prospects and a great amount of players and started to churn out a lot of guys. And that has slowed in terms of prospects because the KHL seems to have wanted to keep a lot of their guys there. But I think those 3 nations they have a lot to prove to themselves and to each other, and they want to one-up them, and they want to prove to the people that, yeah, this is still us. We're still the dominant in hockey. And the problem is when they're you have a pissing match between the three of you. Team like Sweden comes in and sweeps in and takes it. Team like Finland, team like Switzerland. These teams are still, they're developing just as good because they took the model from these three nations. They know what they need to do to build it and to harness their own guys, and away they go. They're right there with the other three. So as good as the power nations as they are, they're worried too much about each other than they are about these other nations that are coming up, and maybe it's time to turn away from the whole Cold War, because as political as it is, I don't think that's too much of an epidemic anymore, because I think all the Kennedys are somewhat from that era are somewhat dead, if not dead inside. But I mean, yeah, I think it's a time now where you look at the World Juniors this year. Hell, Canada didn't get a medal. The U.S. didn't make it to the medal round. All these nations are catching up with the U.S., Canada, and Russia, and no one's taking notice. And I think if we don't have either Canada, Russia, or the U.S. medal in this Olympics, then that's the time where all the three hockey federations are going to be like, all right, we need to turn away from these other two guys and focus on the greater scale of everything else, because these countries are catching up with us, and we need to find a way to actually start getting ahead of them like we used to be.
Is that the most interesting possible result in this year's Olympics?
I think so.
I agree.
Just because of the fact that, especially with Canada's built up so much, made a big deal about this. They're bringing top guys. It's the whole convoluted idea that we could have a second team and still medal. No, you really couldn't. You brought your best guys. It's going to be fine. The U.S., they want to prove to themselves that 2010 wasn't a big fluke, and Russia just wants to win on home ice. So, I mean, if neither of those three medal at all, and especially if Russia doesn't even get to the gold medal game, there's going to be a lot of hell to pay in those federations, and it's going to be fun to see. But, again, wake me up when the medal round happens, and I'll be good to go, and I'll be right there with the excitement. Because, yeah, again, as cool as Austria-Norway would be to see, I don't know. I can't put that many umlauts over on my computer because I don't know where that button is when I hit function. I don't know. Put little dots over the O's. Is this the button? No, I just shut down my machine. How did this happen?
Tab.
Exactly. When did Liechtenstein get a team? My goodness gracious.
So you started in the early aughts.
Yes.
All right, that's when I was going through puberty.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still was too. I was like 17, 18 when I first started doing guest spots and then becoming the host.
The flow of information, and I'm not looking for smartphones and Twitter. The flow of information and the difficulty of acquiring quality information. What's that transition been like from when you started until now?
I think when we started, it was so much harder to, I guess, get any kind of information outside of what you saw on the internet and stuff like that, because it wasn't as widespread. You had to go to, you actually had to do the legwork. You had to go to papers or know a guy who does this scouting of papers. That's why we lucked out so great with our hookup with Liut Richardson, because he was doing that for a couple years before we started the show. So he was scouring all the newspapers, all the online websites, all this, that, and the other thing for any kind of information in terms of trade rumors. And back then, it was really hard to know who to trust, and it really showed during the lockout of 2004 when Eklund was the one who came on the scene, and a lot of people thought, what he said was gospel, because of the fact that he had this inside information that no one else had, and no one knows what an insider was. And it's funny, and you snicker at it, as we should do in hindsight, but at the time, everyone thought that he was as legit as possible. But
I know, but I'm snickering because for my next point, I wrote down BS meter just as you were going into Eklund.
And it was so hard to know what was real and what wasn't. And you took a lot of people because it's just like, all right, well, this guy seems legit enough and things of that ilk. But, it was hard to stray away from, or it was hard to get a lot of information and hope that it was reputable. Nowadays, a lot of people are just so in tune, and there's so many people that you can trust and you can't trust. And you go with that too. But when we started out, it was really, really hard to get any kind of information without doing the legwork, without actually going to a reputable source like a newspaper website or a team's actual website or something like that. Because back in the day, it was all message boards, dude, and message boards now have died a slow, painful death.
As they should.
Yeah, but they had their heyday. I mean, that's how I met my wife. So it works out perfect.
Attaboy.
My ex-wife. I shouldn't say wife. She was my wife at the time. But anyway, I won't go into that convoluted psychiatric's couch. But it was a lot harder. But I mean, yeah, it was so much harder to get information and without doing legwork. And nowadays, it seems that information with Twitter, things like that, it's so much easier to get information. It's so much more accessible and you say not even smartphones, but smartphones you can access so many things nowadays that it's so much easier to actually access things rather than have to wait till you go home and find it out on your own.
Tell us about legwork, because it's not that it's not a thing anymore. If anything, it's more of a thing now, but it's evolved into a different kind of creature than it used to be. So when you were starting out, what was the kind of legwork that you had to do? And I understand you didn't have to know the Dewey Decimal System anymore, but if you want to bring in old Dewey, feel free.
Well, he defeated Truman, so I think that's really, he's made his mark. But no, I mean, yeah, like you said, nowadays it's just like, all right, this guy said something, let's go to someone else and try to verify that in an instant. But back in the day, man, if you had a rumor, you actually had to call somebody and say, hey, listen, is this, and this? All right, this person says this thing is happening, and then someone else says something else is happening. Then you have to go to a third source and say, is this true or not? And there was many times where I had to email people back and forth saying, how much of this is true, how much of this is false? And, they would give me one answer, and I would pitch the question to somebody else, and you take it from there. Then see who you're going to believe, because, there's one side, there's the other, in the middle there's the truth.
So you were always caught in a game of telephone.
Yeah, pretty much, for lack of a better term. Like, I try to use emails because I rarely like talking to people on telephones, even ever since I was 16. Telephones is kind of not for me. I'll do email all the time.
Again, talk to my receptionist.
Exactly.
I really am here for you, but we've got to make an appointment so I can sleep.
I understand. I haven't worn jeans since 12. What does that mean? Anyway,
hey, I want to build on this.
Okay.
Your BS meter has certainly been developing over the years.
Oh, it's because you start thinking, like you said, you start thinking rationally, and then it kills everything for the other person. But you let them have their way. It's developed a lot because, you get naive and stuff like that, and I fall back to Lyle all the time because he's an even-keeled guy. He's the guy who actually was able to, ever since 2003, we were able to go to him and say, hey, is this, and this? And he told us why this wouldn't work and why if you bring this guy in, it's going to shake up this thing because it's going to do this. There's so many falling dominoes that he actually helped me out a lot in the early beginning, trying to get that BS meter up and know what's logical and what can work out and what won't work out. As it came along, I've learned of people I can and cannot trust and to lean on their opinions a lot too. Greg Wyshynski is a guy who I've known for a while, and I lean on his decisions and his ideas and stuff like that. Other people, Sean Gentili of Sporting News. I've known him for a bit. I know how to do this. A lot of guys from team sites. I trust their input and output to things. So you learn through experience, and you learn from getting burned or being too naive and thinking one thing or another, that this is the way to be. And then after you get over that naivety, you can go ahead and say, this is what's true, and this is how rationally it'll work.
Well, talk to us about the naivete, because that, depending upon your history with hockey, or perhaps the longevity of your history with hockey, that naivete can manifest itself in several different ways.
I think just the idea of, you look at something so amazing and it's just like, oh, I guess that could happen. This guy seems, it's almost believing. A snake oil salesman, as it were. A guy who is able to go out there and sell you something that you don't even want. But he is selling it in a way that makes you believe that you need this product. One of the things is that, we had someone asking about, or someone tell me about how Steve Stamkos, he's gonna wait till his rookie deal is up with the Tampa Bay Lightning and go right to Toronto. And someone who doesn't, who hasn't been well versed in this whole thing and believes everything they hear will be like, yeah, he is from Toronto and he would go there and he'd fit well there and be offensive. An offensive powerhouse for him. But for a guy like me who's heard that, I'm just like, I let them go on their little diatribe, and when it doesn't happen, they can face the harsh reality of it. But I knew right off the bat, I'm like, look, Stamkos is a franchise player. He's a guy who is well loved in Tampa. He does well in their system. They want to keep him, and he might not get a chance to be a free agent. So you look at everything all rationally, and the naivety almost dies. It dies slower and slower and slower and slower because you go to people and you look at the opinions of other people, and you're like, it clues into you that, all right, well, this guy might not be a perfect fit again. Maybe this guy's not a fit for us in general. Why was he a fit for us in the first place? You start to wise up. You become more wiser with what you deal with. And if you get burned too many times, that naivety meter is just going to go gone. You're not going to believe anything, and you're just going to be so cynical. And that's the balance. You can be either completely naive or completely cynical about everything, but in that middle is the balance where you should be.
Has rationality killed or increased your fandom and love for hockey?
That's a good question. To say that rationality has I guess, killed it a little bit. But again, since I was 18, I went into that professional mindset where I haven't been too much of a fan. But I think it also helps me out in terms of going, yeah, I'm rational enough to know that this, and this is going to happen. And this, and this is not going to happen. So I'm more well-versed. I'm not getting all crazy. I'm not getting my hopes up and just to have them dashed. So the rationality there is just like, all right, well, if this happens, it happens. I'm not going to get my hopes up, so I'm not going to be that uber disappointed if it does happen, or if it doesn't happen. So it's almost an element of surprise when rationality comes in.
It sounds like your heart has been dashed a few times.
A lot of times. The whole Yager thing. It's funny because my buddy Sean, who occasionally does the show and runs the company, but it's funny. Sean O was the guy who predicted Yager getting traded to the Capitals, and we didn't believe him at all, and it happened. And I'm just like, well, okay, I guess I have to believe Sean now. And then he made awful statements. I'm like, well, I can't believe you anymore. So my rationale of that has worked out. But I think rationality is good, man. Like, you need to be rational. If you're going to be super fanboy, it's one thing to be super fanboy and, actually have rationality, but it's another thing to be super fanboy and think that I almost call it Toronto syndrome or New York Rangers syndrome. No offense, that all the good players are going to want to play in these big markets because of the history and because they'll be hailed as gods. But the flip side of that is if they're playing craptastically, they're going to get shred to bits. So I don't know any player who would want that. As much as good as the good can get, the bad can get even worse.
It can, and the list of players who've chosen not to go to any of these big cities is much larger than the ones who've chosen to go.
And they're probably better off for it, for their career.
Yeah, and the leagues in which they played in any of the leagues, are much better for it. Because if there was that much of a drain to like 3, 4, 5 cities, that'd be terrible for the sport. It was fantastic that Paul Kariya turned down $1 bajillion from the Rangers, instead went to Nashville.
Yeah, but by that time, Paul Kariya was already, he had his struggles in Colorado, and we remember that ill-fated year that he had with Solani, and they couldn't get anything done there. But it's neither here nor there. But I like the fact that guys are trying to make their marks elsewhere, and other places are getting a little bit more of a look at. I mean, Tampa Bay, they're a ragtag bunch of guys, but man, they've built out a nice little team for themselves even without Stamkos. I mean, you look at what Phoenix did a couple years back, what they were able to do. All the California teams have been amazing. So the more spread out it is, the better it is. And even though they're spread out, and even though the Kings play in LA, another big media market, they don't get hounded as much because it almost seems that while hockey may matter there, it doesn't matter on a grandiose scale. And the writers aren't going to be guys to shred their people down. They're actually going to try to build them up because they want people to actually go and attend these games and cheer them on rather than, know that the fans are always going to be there and boo them all the time. And I think that's one of the things that the bigger markets have, like Montreal, Toronto, and New York. They're able to, break their players down because the fans are going to be there regardless. Meaning these other places, you're not going to have the fans there, it's a poor thing if you knock them down too much. The fans aren't going to support them, and it's going to just turn into a spat against the team rather than just the player.
Developing the understanding of team dynamics. This goes, you need that in order to understand trading and other player transactions. Because when you were talking about how Lyle Richards understands that, if you do this, then this, that, and the other thing are the result of this one action. Was it more difficult when you were starting out to understand the domino effect of each decision? Or do you think that it's still equally difficult because now we are aware of all the different factors, and even though we're aware of them, we don't necessarily understand the full-scale implication of each factor?
For me, it was a little bit easier because I actually had, having playing experience and trying to get into coaching at such a young age, was able to know what components worked and what components didn't work and things like that. Jumping into the media side of things, it was a little bit harder because the team, different GMs went different wants and different needs and things of that ilk. But at the same time, it was a little bit easier for me in the transition about why this move wouldn't work and why this move would work. But at the same time, even nowadays, it's hard for me to gauge depending on what teams do because you throw that caveat of the salary cap. So a guy might get traded for who may not fit into the thing, but he's a resource and his salary is good. So I think for me, it was easier to learn dynamics than it would be for someone who's just a casual fan of the game, and they see this big name and they wonder why. Well, that trade will work out great for our team. Why aren't they going to do it? And then you have to explain to them that, all right, well, guess what? If this guy's only going to be here for a couple years, and we're going to give up an asset that could be in the NHL for 10, 15 years, so you do the math on that portion, and still they don't get it. They still just see the name recognition. If you watch the game a lot, then it becomes more and more relevant. I don't know, something with event at the end. It makes you realize more and more what component and what pieces are needed in terms of what a team needs and what they're going to get and what they're going to go after. Because if you see your team's trouble on the blue line, but you have a whole bunch of forwards to give up, you're not going to go for that star right winger. You're going to go for a defenseman, which I think Colorado might do. Colorado's a perfect case where their defense is suspect at best, but their offense is pillowing over. So they'll probably go after a defenseman first rather than someone like Matt Molson or Thomas Vanek, like we mentioned earlier. So good times had by all. I think watching the game is definitely going to be something that needs to be done in order to realize what your team does and doesn't need and what any team does or doesn't need.
Scotty, let's make some closing remarks. All right. Other than fart noises, Scotty Wazz, where can we find you again? Each of your shows and where on Twitter and such, as well as what are your Edward R. Murrow type closing statements for the audience? Because we've probably been listening to you for between 1 and 3 hours, depending upon how I cut the 5 hours of audio I have with you. So how would you like to leave our audience?
Well, first and foremost, I thank you and Jacob for having me on. I appreciate the chance to talk to your audience. You can find me, the show at faceoffhockeyshow.com, and we'll post our YouTube videos up there. We're also on iTunes. Just search Face Off Hockey Show, and we're there. Facebook, FOHS Radio. You find us there. For me personally, just find me at Scotty Wazz, and I'm just a Twitter machine, so you guys can pick me up there. For closing remarks, it's just, it's for me, it's been quite the journey to go from a point where I'm interviewing people to being interviewed, and it's quite the surreal experience from looking at where I was when I was 18 starting out and to where I am now. I still am the same idiot person I've always been, but I just have a microphone in front of me, which makes everything I say partially true. So I like that aspect of things, and it's been a fun ride so far, and I just hope that it just keeps on rolling along, much like Limp Bizkit taught us to do back in the early 2000s. Because that was a time, my friend. That was a time for red Yankees hats and baggy T-shirts. It was a good time. It was a good time for First Down too, in those big puffy jackets. So that was fun. So I don't know. I thank for people for listening to me banter on and on. Even though when I look back at everything I say, I'm just like, well, why did I say that? Kind of thing. That didn't make sense at all. Those weren't even words, and that was a bit Swedish. But yeah, no, it's been a trip, and it's hard to believe that we've been doing this show 12 and a half years, and the places I've been, so it's been quite the trip, and I appreciate people coming on the ride, and if you haven't come on the ride yet, then, you should. It's a fun expose into the mind of people who love hockey, but also love going off on tangents and going off on, just real life shit. So it's been fun, and I thank you for the opportunity to give me even broader of a scale.
It takes a lot to be interesting. It takes a lot to be knowledgeable, and it takes a certain skill to be able to put those two together on a consistent basis. If this is your introduction to Scotty Wazz, I'm not sure how much of a justice it did for him, but I encourage you to go find him, Wazz with 2 Z's, and go read and listen. There are a few people in this world who are able to master that skill. And our young friend isn't quite there yet. But your younger host, can safely tell you that there are some people that are worth following their example of. Scotty Wazz is worth following the example of. So I thank you and for Jacob Bourne for coming on and sharing basically from mid-afternoon until well into the evening. I think I literally have 5 hours of audio to sort through. And I really look forward to doing this again, both in person and over the Skype waves.
Yes, and I thank you, and I'd be more than happy to do it. Just make sure that Jacob's not on here because it was just terrible. It was just, I don't know. He brought the show down. I'm kidding. He's a great guy. And he might be on a hot date right now that we don't know about that he's going to have to tell. You're going to have to get that out of him for next show.
Totally.
Because if you say his schedule's clear, then, he has no reason not to be here with us.
Scotty, there's a reason why his name is the first name in Born to Puck.
Is this the only time you hear him?
All right, my friend. Listen, remember to chirp what you love, and I'll see you again.
Thank you.